Crime has been a topic of cinema since the beginning, with early shorts focusing on small moments of action or quick chase scenes. Shorts such as The Great Train Robbery laid the basic outline. A crime is committed, followed by the criminals being brought to justice. The Keystone Cop series brought a lighter tone to the genre, focusing more on slapstick gags. The shorts were popular from 1912 through 1917, launching the careers of many famous silent actors, including Fatty Arbuckle. Aside from these shorts, crime was a difficult genre to produce. Feature films of the silent era did not feature the criminal underworld as a topic as often as the sound era would. Crime established itself as a standalone genre very early on after the introduction of sound. The Prohibition era had led to organized crime rackets being a topic of national news, and producers were quick to adapt these stories. Movies such as Scarface, Little Caesar, and The Public Enemy tell stories of common men working their way through the criminal underworld. To the audience of the era, seeing characters break the unjust rules of society were liberating. Most of the films revolved around the concept of a down-on-his-luck man who enters the criminal underworld in order to make both his life and the life of his loved ones better. This is kept in check by the film's ending, usually laying out the familiar warning that crime does not pay. The genre would fall as soon as it appeared, due to the strict violations of the 1933 Hays Code. By the 1940s, a more artistic approach to the subject of crime led to film noir. Low, moody key lighting, smoke-filled corridors, voiceovers, and jazz soundtracks formed the environment in which femme fatales, mob bosses, mooks, detectives, and private investigators double-cross one another, culminating in morally gray confrontations. Where the early gangster films were well praised and left their cultural impact, the noir established itself with a nearly two-decade existence of both critically and commercially era-defining films. Many modern stock characters come from the noir era, especially the hard-boiled private eye and the seductive femme fatale. It would survive until the late 1950s, where at that point, most of its tropes had been used so frequently that they now bordered on self-parody.
Today we have Dana Martino. We're going to ask you some questions about the scenes that took place while you're filming your movie.
Okay.
So the first question is going to be, what was your job title?
I worked on a few small films, but my first major film was actually in Bocas del Toro, Panama, and it was called Paradise Lost, released January 16, 2015 in the USA, and directed by Andrea Di Stefano. I was just an extra in that film, but the last one I was part of was called The Wetlands, released in September 15, 2017 in the USA. It was directed and written by Emmanuel De La Valle, and producer was Fred D. Caruso. This movie was filmed here in South Jersey, and I was a stunt double for lead actress Reina de Corsi. The basic plot was, as a major storm approaches the outskirts of Atlantic City, a newly sober police detective goes to an extreme measure to make sure that his estranged family does not fall victim to the vengeance of a local crime lord.
What was your responsibility in this movie?
For the Wetlands, it was my responsibility to perform some maneuvers on my skateboard during the day, as well in the night, and sometimes where there's scenes with rain in them.
Where did you get your start?
I basically got my start just by hearing about a movie being filmed, and I auditioned and got the part. And then last film, they actually reached out to me because I was one of the only few girls that knew how to skateboard in the area.
Have there been any influential people in your life that pushed you to enter the film industry?
There was no one who really pushed me, but there was a lot of people who were supportive. I'd say my dad kind of pushed me to who I am today, though, and showed me to just chase after my dreams and be who I want to be.
Are there any crazy moments you remember?
Well, the craziest moments on the set really related to a lot of the plot of the actual movie. As a stunt double, I really wasn't fully aware of the movie plot, and when the filming first started, I started piecing together the scenes that I was being in and started piecing together the whole movie. One of the scenes, I was skating down the boardwalk and my character was exchanging drugs with the top guy, and at one point she gets slapped across the face and falls on the ground because the drugs were too short or something, and basically I was not ready for that. They told me I was doing that the day of, so that was a crazy part. And then another crazy part was when I found out I'd be skating in the rain, which is actually created by these huge rain machines and big fans for wind. It wasn't fake. You definitely got wet, and it was really slippery while skating. And when I got my check-in, it was actually a big surprise because I received extra for not only filming at night, but also for what they called wet scenes, basically scenes in the rain.
What's the worst part about the film industry?
The worst part of the film industry. I really don't have much to say about it. It's kind of just like, there's a lot of scenarios that could have turned out negative or been wrong or frustrating, but overall my experience have been pretty good. I would say when I was filming an extra in Panama, it was for very long in the hot sun, and it definitely got boring and really hot, but it was still a cool experience.
What is it like working with a director?
Working with the director for the last film was actually awesome. Obviously, not all directors are the same, and sometimes they're known for being a little me because they're artists and have a very specific vision they want to achieve, and depending on the cast, things may or may not run as smoothly as they wanted. But the directors in the last film, which is The Wetlands, were Italians, and I lucked out. I'm Italian too, so right off the bat, we hit it off. And to this day, I still have contact with him, and we've had lunch together a few times, and we still talk about the good times we had on the movie set and how much fun it was, and then hopefully I get to be recasted sometime.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate this interview. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you.
The passing of the rating system allowed for a much greater display of criminal exploits. New directors such as Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, and Brian De Palma would push barriers with what could be shown on film. Leaving the fantasy world of noir, this era produced films that had a grimy realism sewn throughout them. While films like The Godfather and Scarface would focus on criminal enterprises, other films such as Taxi Driver focused more on characters who can't deal with the environment they are a part of, similar to the gangster films of the early 1930s.
So, this little film studio got started up in Benton in 2016 by these two ladies. What were their names? Dinah Engel and Sherry McCracken. You see, Engel grew up in those parts, taking acting classes and doing theater, whatever she had to get by. She dabbled around in some other areas, like when she was COO at Member Solutions. Nothing could keep her off of theater. McCracken, on the other hand, she's a woman who knows what she wants. I like that. She's been doing film and photography her whole life. It's practically all she's got. But hey, if you're gonna do one thing, might as well do it well. One success they had was American Gothic. Some buddies of mine, they had escaped from jail, you see. They were convicts. They were holding this home hostage and running from the law, but somehow, these two ladies got the whole thing on camera. You know, they kept it in the family, using actors from around the way, locals back east. They filmed it in Elverson, PA. It's not New York, but East Coast is East Coast. The bank robbery and the police trying to figure out who done it really spoke to me. Must have spoke to a lot of people. Film festivals in Philly and Louisville heaped nominations for it, in directing, acting, film of the year. Not bad for two chicks from Ventnor. Not bad at all. I can only hope these ladies continue to make me proud and honor the genre. We all know how overdone these stories can become and how predictable the twists can be. Yeah, they need to M. Night Shyamalan these bad boys and show them what's coming. Then like, bam, I see dead people. Never saw that twist coming. Not at 30 minutes and not at 2 hours. think these ladies really have what it takes to keep it going and surprise the crap out of me. The Syndicate. You know, the movie syndication racket. It's where they might want to get to, but they're not there yet. Gotta bring in more money than these movies brought. Can't find how much bank they made, but once they hit it bigger, movie syndication will follow. And syndication always catches up with you. And ventners aren't very hard to find.
Two opposing subgenres appeared in this era. The first answered the social issues in the 1970s with Law and Order, focusing on cops and vigilantes who play by their own rules to get their man. Calling back to a more tough guy era, these characters embodied modern cowboys battling violent thugs in the streets. They are usually at odds with their fellow lawbringers, who seek a more progressive way to deal with criminals. The other subgenre focuses on a previously underrepresented minority in filmmaking. The blaxploitation film celebrated the success of the civil rights era, while still making clear the after effects of the system were still being felt. Heroes played by Richard Roundtree and Pam Grier became cultural icons. Many of the films would bring funk, soul, and disco into the public spotlight. Bringing a hopeful message to the audience and being a forerunner to the action genre, the blaxploitation film holds one of the most important and influential places in cinema history. With a new decade came a new tone. Fast-talking street cops with a bit of comedy thrown in. This often crossed paths with the action genre, with an early appearance in the herald of the buddy cop film, 48 Hours, starring Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Murphy would follow this up with Beverly Hills Cop. The buddy cop film and 80s crime would be perfected with Lethal Weapon, following the misadventures of a mentally unstable cop and his disapproving partner, who was 20 years his senior. The late 1980s and early 1990s brought a revival of the mafia film. These started with The Untouchables, quickly allowing Coppola and Scorsese to return to the style that made them famous. This era would become defined by its actors, with numerous appearances by Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Chaz Palminteri. Its influence would spread even to family films, such as Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Dick Tracy. While the veterans of New Hollywood were back to making gangster films, a new class of independent directors headed by the Coen brothers, Quentin Tarantino, and Robert Rodriguez brought new styles to the crime genre. Focusing on hitmen and assassins who have a penchant for monologue, these directors reworked crime films into black comedies, while still keeping the plot serious and the action well choreographed. Over-the-top violence contrasted against calm dialogue scenes with fish-out-of-the-water characters brings the genre to a far less gritty tone than in the past. The final trend in crime in the 20th century would be films whose main attraction was their twist endings. First done by The Usual Suspects, the late 1990s would focus on dark crime thrillers whose surprise endings would come to define the film.
California, stay away from here. Stay away from here now. Don't come in here. Whatever you hear, stay away. John Doe has the upper hand. Mills!
You know, the top-grossing organized crime film was The Godfather.
What?
Yeah, it grossed over $335 million.
Shut the fuck up! What the fuck are you talking about?
Did you hear me, detective? $335 million. It was directed by Francis Coppola and won Best Picture.
What?
Oh, come on, you heard me. The Untouchables is number 2 on the list, directed by Brian De Palma. It grossed over $144 million. The Departed is third on the list. That grossed over $142 million. And won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, and third on the list is The Departed, released in 2006 and directed by Martin Scorsese. This film grossed $142 million.
What the fuck did you just say?
Then I researched the top grossing films for film noir movies. The first on the list is Notorious, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, grossed over $10 million. Then, ranked number 2 is The Lost Weekend, made in 1945 and directed by Billy Wilder. That grossed over $9 million. Third on the list is a 1946 film called The Postman Always Rings Twice, directed by Trey Garnett. That grossed over $8 million. And what about mystery movies? Number 1 being 1999's The Sixth Sense, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. This movie grossed over $296 million. Number 2 on that list is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and grossed over $290 million.
Show me what's in the box! What's in the fucking box?
Heist films are in that box. Inception is number 1 and grossed over $62 million. Fast 5 is number 2 and grossed over $86 million, and Ocean 8 is third and grossed over $38 million.
The gun down, David.
Crime movies have been moving away from organized crime and heist films. There seems to be more of an action and science fiction taking place in 2019.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Glass. It's a film planned to release in 2019 and follows a security guard that uses his supernatural abilities to track Kevin Crumb, a disturbed murderer who has 24 personalities and is the sequel to 24.
You lied, you fucking liar! Shut up!
That's what he wants. He wants you to shoot him.
No! No! Tell me it's not true! You tell me that's not her!
It is true. I'm not one to lie. Crime films are changing. They are becoming more suspenseful and contain more special effects.
She's alright! You tell me she's alright!
It's becoming less about the crime itself and more about the dramatic, high-pressure moments the characters face. Like the new Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is about the Manson family murders, and are planned to release in July of 2019.
You fucking tell me she's alright!
Revenge is another new theme being presented in crime films. Movies like John Wick 3 and Cold Pursuit are planned to release in 2019.
No! No! No!
Cold Pursuit is about a snowplow driver seeking revenge against the drug dealers that killed his son.
Give me the gun, David.
Oh God! Oh God!
If you kill him, he will win.